Ken Underhill. Thanks very much for joining me. How are you?
Good. How you doing, man?
Good, good. So we had after adjusting the camera a little bit, we're ready to go. And first and foremost, happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, same to you. Hopefully your significant other got you something good.
Uh, yeah, always, she's always working on it. So, so let me start with this. First and foremost, you have amazing presence online. You've really contributed to the space, the cybersecurity space. You have a large amount of followers. You're a content creator as well, which is fascinating. There's can't remember the numbers, but the majority of people are online, but they don't actually create content. It's just because it's tough. It's like something that takes some energy and effort. So kudos to you for doing that. But why don't we kind of walk me through memory lane? How do you get started in cyber? What was your kind of your journey for those people who are not familiar with you?
Yeah. So first off, thanks for having me on the show. So I started way back in the day in IT, got out for a bit, did medicine, and then came back into the more general IT realm. So network admin, network engineer, some sysadmin work, IT help desk, kind of basically the traditional path, if you will. And then as part of that, it was naturally just doing some what we now call cybersecurity related tasks. And then that blossomed eventually into like the standard kind of job titles, if you will. So I worked as a penetration tester for a number of years. I've done leadership. I mean, I jumped from like individual contributor. I don't know who the audience is for this, but it's individual contributors like your regular job, if you will. And then I jumped directly into like director level and skipped that middle management level. So I'm a little different in that regard. Maybe some others, they kind of took that more traditional step-by-step path. And then I started building my own companies because I got tired of being in one place I was at. Dude, I was in like 10 hours of meetings a day, and then I had to do my work. I'm like, why? We had like meetings about the meeting, to plan for the meeting. I'm like, wait a minute here, like 4 or 5 meetings for the meeting later. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I was like, that's the only way to control my time really is to kind of do my own thing. And so I've been doing that for a while. Currently, I'm invested in a couple of companies. One does work in the cloud space. Can't really go into too much detail there because of some of the contracts they have. And then another one's kind of a service provider, and similar thing there. Some of the contracts they have, I can't really dig into that. And then I've been having people ask me a lot recently, actually, when we're filming this, to restart a training company. So you mentioned the content creation aspect of it. I do have a YouTube channel. I put out some stuff there. I've, as you mentioned, a lot of followers on LinkedIn. And then I guess the other, where a lot of people know me from, besides like social media, at least in the past, is I used to build a lot of courses for like places like Cybersecurity. So I've trained millions of people around the world that have gone through my various courses online. So won a lot of awards in the industry. I mean, I'm not big into that. Look at all your followers. Look at all the awards type of. There's a couple of awards that are meaningful for me. One being the Cyber Champion Award I got from Women's Society of Cyber Jitsu. I won an Outstanding Educator Award with SC Media. That was 5 or 6 years ago. And then they call it the Global Cybersecurity 40 Under 40. I think that's what it's called. I got that I think I actually won it twice, but I won it, I don't know, 2022 maybe, 2020, but those are the three of all the ones I've won that are kind of like the most impactful for me, because those were kind of based on all the work I've done to help people, and that's really what drives me at the end of the day. It's kind of rewinding a little bit back to my growing up past. I was super poor, didn't have food a lot of the times, and so I always try to be that person that there were people that kind of helped me along when I was a kid. And so I try to be that person, for someone else in their cybersecurity career. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. I've got my hand in different things. I actually just joined an advisory board for a education company, but I don't think I could say that yet because I don't think I've signed an NDA with them. So I try to stay out there doing good in the world.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, and it sounds like a very unscripted career path, if you
Yeah.
may. So like you're pursuing different avenues. You figure out what you don't like, and then figure out what you do like, and then it sounds like you've been busy too as well. It sounds like you're like you were not sitting down waiting for stuff to happen, which is remarkable. So I can tell you, you asked me who's it from. Uh, the people watching these podcasts are, they vary from people just getting into the cyber all the way to managing directors of some very large companies. And but it's really remarkable to see even the younger generations. I'm teaching now a course on ethical hacking at the college level, fourth year college, and some of the students are just getting themselves into it. So this is a kind of second, there's the prerequisite course, and then there's now they're learning about ethical hacking. And what I recognize is a lot of them have the passion to do more, but they don't know what they don't know. Meaning they don't realize they're just such a vast world of available to them. It's not just the ethical hacking, penetration testing, but just interviewing somebody like yourself that is now have their hands in a lot of different aspects of cyber, right? So you talked about, from education to cloud, to startups. But again, for people that are just not familiar with the space and just starting out, a lot of it is unknown. So why don't I ask you, like, just kind of the first question is, you describe growing up and having interest in the technical aspect, but was there something in the upbringing that it gravitated towards, having this kind of the STEM or technical, is there something particular that you liked about the space? Because you mentioned you dabble a bit in medical as well.
Yeah, no, actually, I wanted to be a doctor. I was not a geek at all growing up, so I'm a little different than others. Like a lot of people were, hackers early on. The only exposure I had to computers, actually, this is going to date me a little bit, but Oregon Trail, that game, if for anyone listening that knows what I'm talking about. And then like I actually hated computers because I was like, I liked writing my papers out, and they started making us type them up. And so I'm a horrible typer still to this day, and I'm fully aware of that. I've tried. I'm like, focus on your strengths, not your weaknesses. Because you can really multiply your strengths and then just hire for your weaknesses. So yeah, there's no passion, at least initially. After high school, I had an opportunity to get my first IT job because I was like I want to make some money, and I had that grandiose vision like probably some new people watching are like, oh, you're going to make millions of dollars. I thought I'd be the next Bill Gates. Didn't happen, at least not back then. Still not a billionaire, but that's not a life goal at this point, So it is what it is. So yeah, I never had that passion. I do want to rewind real quick on something you mentioned about staying busy and kind of taking these different things. There's a quote, and I forget who told me it was some mentor years ago, but opportunity favors the bold. And so I've gotten to the level I'm at not because I'm smarter than anyone else. I mean, people tell you I'm a smart guy, but there's far smarter people than me in the world. It's just every time an opportunity came, instead of like thinking about it for a million days and getting in my own way, I was like, let me just do it and I'll figure it out. And that's the only thing that's really, that and persistence. Those are like the two keys to
And
success.
it's like the I don't know if you saw the movie with I think it was Yes, with Jim Carrey. He wakes up in the morning one day and decides to say yes to every single question if somebody asks him, and that kind of opened up a huge, vast amount of opportunities. And it sounds like you kind of indirectly were doing just that. If somebody came with a proposition, you didn't think twice about it. You just took it head on and figure out as you go.
100%. And like almost every single time I said yes, I was totally uncomfortable, totally had imposter syndrome. In my mind, I was totally not qualified, like especially moving into like leadership roles. But those other people, and that's what I realized years later, like those other people saw something in me because of their experience, and of them seeing other leaders that they developed. And so I think for those listening, whatever level you're at, whether you're brand new trying to get in or you're someone that's even experienced in the industry for a long time, understand that other people often see the gift inside of you that you don't see, right? And so just try things. That's the biggest thing for, especially for someone like trying to figure out like which career path. Because you mentioned there's a lot of them. I've got a YouTube channel, so just look up my name online on YouTube, and I've got like a whole playlist of career videos. They're not all technical roles. Some are what we would call like feeder roles, like marketing, sales. But these are roles that like someone, especially coming straight out of college, you may not. I mean, realistically, with the job market, you're probably not going to become a pen tester right out of college. It's just the reality of there's not enough jobs for everyone. Even though the media will tell you there's millions of jobs open, those are for experienced people. There are more entry level jobs open, but understand that you might have to do what we call like a feeder or a transition role to get into the eventual goal that you have. So, as an example, just give a few examples of that. The traditional IT route I mentioned, like sysadmin, network engineer, IT help desk, that's kind of the more traditional feeder role where people think of. Software engineering is another one. But on the non-technical side, sales, marketing, project management, technical writing, oftentimes if you just look at those jobs open at a cybersecurity company, there's a couple benefits. Number one, you get a paycheck. Number two, they're a lot easier for you to get into, probably, especially fresh out of school or a boot camp or whatever, or if you're a career transitioner later in life. And then also, you're going to get trained in some capacity on whatever their solution is. So we'll just Splunk's a bigger company. Everyone's probably applying there, so it's more difficult for you. But I'll use them as an example. So you're going to get trained on Splunk stuff for free. So now you don't have to spend thousands of dollars to learn Splunk stuff. Plus, you've got Splunk on your resume. I mean, realistically, most people, at least your first couple years in, they're not going to care that you were marketing at Splunk compared to you work in a more technical role, because they're like, okay, well, if Splunk hired you, they must have saw something, right, that they liked, and so we should take a chance on you, right? So sometimes it's that non-traditional pathway to get in. But yeah, like I mentioned on the YouTube channel, I've got a ton of videos on various careers. I don't cover them all. Like you mentioned, it's so vast, and even like looking at something like pen tester, there's a variety of pen testing things you can do, right? It's not all just web app or network pen testing. Variety of things, variety of industries you can work in. You could get into the critical infrastructure space, the OT security, ICS networking space. It's so vast, it can be overwhelming. So my suggestion is like, pick your top three and realistically pick like one career, like, okay, I want to be a pen tester, but pick your top three industries and then start like actually looking for jobs here now to see what skills are they asking for. So that way, while you're in college or if you're in a boot camp right now, or if you're just somebody randomly finding this, podcast, you can figure out, okay, what do employees actually want compared to what everybody else is telling me online? Because people tell you, study this, study that. I'm like, my gosh, I've got no skills compared to what they're telling you to study, for an entry level role. And also the other thing I want to quell real quick is you do not need the CISSP. You don't need to go take that as an entry level person. You really shouldn't. And number one, you can't hold it anyways. You can't officially hold it because you don't have the 5 years experience. But take anything people on social media tell you, including this podcast, with a grain of salt, simply because everyone's got an opinion. And if you listen to everyone's opinion, you won't do anything in life. You'll just keep constantly trying to learn, and you'll never get that first job. So a lot of things you don't need. I didn't have degrees or certs to get started, right? And a lot of people I know didn't have that. Yes, these days maybe it makes a little difference, but you don't need that stuff. So if you're broke right now, like I was growing up listening to this, figure out another way. I mean, an entry level certification on your resume, the same way to get that keyword is to buy a course on like Udemy for $10 and say I'm studying for Security Plus. That'll get you past the filtering without having to actually pay, I don't know, what is it, like $300 I think now for the voucher to take the exam. So you could just be studying for something and bypass, the keyword filtering on that stuff too. So I'll shut up now because I have a tendency to ramble, and we'll go for like 4 hours if I.
No, this is perfect. You make my life so much easier, Ken. And the stuff you say, it's like, there's a lot of gems out there, and I'll definitely provide the link to YouTube. And it sounds like, as well as that, at least you're a perfect example of success is on the other side of comfort, meaning. Every time you took on an endeavor, it wasn't necessarily like the most comfortable thing to do, and I highly recommend to do just that. Meaning that not everything you do that's comfortable would lead into good things. Sometimes it's just a matter of doing it what's not comfortable. And the hormesis principle, if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you a little stronger. Uh, and I also want to double click on the fact that you don't necessarily even need an expensive 4-year college degree, even though yes, it's highly recommended. There's quite a few people out there that just by creating their own GitHub repository, they create a sample of their work, they publish. It seems like the barriers to entry these days are, relatively speaking, low. And also, again, when you grew up, a lot of the information was not publicly available. You had to really dig down and try to figure out. But now, thanks to people like yourself, but there's just massive amount of information and how-tos and and then spinning off, a AWS account or getting one of those Raspberry Pi and you know installing some open source distribution and playing around with it. There's just so many venues for you to learn, and I would highly recommend that. And also, I would say that even taking a course in college does not necessarily guaranteed anything. Is you have to be curious. You gotta figure out what you don't know. And then I love the fact that you mentioned that don't listen to anybody. Some of the times, like, it's just like stocks, right? When it's in the press, it's in the price. Meaning, sometimes when they tell you that there's lack of jobs, it's just already either filled or you know, it's like Wayne Gretzky. You got to skate where the puck is going to be, know where the puck is. And sometimes you don't know until you have to figure out on your own. So a lot of this stuff has, self motivation, curiosity, and so on and so on. I don't know if you have any comments on what I just said.
Yeah, and one thing I'll mention is, kind of going back to the taking action thing. Oftentimes, when you take action when you're not comfortable, regardless of what you believe in, I'm not religious, but a lot of people are out there. But whether it's a deity or the universe or whatever you want to call it, but you'll find that the right people are suddenly attracted to you. And I don't mean like they're trying to date you. I'm talking about like all of a sudden you'll get
Yeah.
a message on LinkedIn, right? Or all of a sudden someone will send you a random message saying, "Hey, check out this book," or you'll see a random video, or. But if you didn't take that action, that stuff wouldn't. And if you look at, of course, I can't think of any of the books now, but there's a book actually called The Intention Experiment, and we're not going to dive into manifestation stuff, but there's some scientific stuff in the book, and there's it's a reticular. It's all RAS. I forget what it stands for, but basically, the whole concept is if you focus on something. That's why, like, if I, for example, focus on Toyota cars and I start driving down the road, all of a sudden I see Toyotas everywhere because my brain's focused on Toyota cars, right? So, when we talk about taking that action, it's really just focusing yourself on doing, working towards that goal, whatever that thing is you have, and and that's why you got to pick one thing because otherwise you're shooting in 1,000 directions, like you said with the training stuff. But that focuses your brain and that starts attracting all the things you might need to accomplish that. Now, it doesn't mean you can sit on the couch and eat Cheetos and magically, you get a six-figure cybersecurity career. And definitely be wary there's a lot of those YouTube videos out there. Like, you're going to get a GRC job and no experience, no IT background, and 7 days if you just buy my coaching program. Don't buy the coaching program because that's all BS. It just doesn't happen. Even people that paid 10 grand for I'm not gonna say the guy's name on the podcast here, but people that paid 10 grand for his program still can't get a job because it's complete BS. Like, it's just not gonna happen. Even the hiring process itself takes longer than a week. But going back to kind of the talking about all the different training options, I think that could be, the information's all out there these days for very low cost or free. But the challenge here again is scatterbrain, right? Like, oh, so and so said to learn this and to learn that, and I need to learn this and that, and the reality of what you're going to see, like in a job interview, like just for an entry level SOC analyst, I'm probably going to ask you some general knowledge, CIA triad, what's a threat versus vulnerability, just maybe ask you a little bit about vulnerability scanning, what you've done so far with SIM tools. I'm not expecting you to be like the world's super instant responder day one, right? Like I fully expect I'm going to have to train you up as somebody brand new. So I think the other thing I'll add on that is, besides focusing, so one exercise I do, it's called the circle of focus. Not something I invented, by the way, just something I do. So basically, you take a piece of paper, you draw a circle, and all the things you're trying to do, you write in there, and you divide it up like a pie. And you're going to start to see that, oh, I'm only giving 5% effort to all these different, these 20 different things. Now you know you need to start cutting stuff out because you're not going to accomplish anything if you do it that way. So as an example, let's say you're working on a college degree right now. That's probably going to be 100%, right? Like you shouldn't be trying to necessarily start like a YouTube channel and learn software engineering and learn this and that, like you, you're not going to be able to put a lot of effort into any of those and not be good at anything, right? So that's one aspect on that there. And the training, like you said, there's so much free and low cost training out there. It could be overwhelming. And that's why you've got to really, and I know people love to be on their phones, but like sometimes you just need to put the phone away, go sit, like if you got a closet or in your room or something, get an old school piece of paper and a pen and like literally just sit there quietly for like 20 minutes and just whatever comes to your mind, just kind of jot it down as far as a career path. Because eventually once your mind settles, because social media and stuff, it's dopamine hits constantly, boom, 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 boom. That's why so many people have mental issues these days, and both at a cognitive level, like there's really a lot of stupid people out there, but also with no common sense. And we could all tell you 1,000 of those in the workplace. But also there's dopamine, like you get the instant hits of like, ooh, somebody liked my post. But when you settle your brain away from that stuff, then you can actually kind of, your body will naturally focus you towards something, and you'll be like, okay, I really want to be pen tester, right? Or even like a top, 3, like I mentioned earlier, type of list. So, but it's, the information is so much these days, but at the same time, it's too much, right? There's a million places to learn, like even just trying to be a junior pen tester. I mean, there's all sorts of boot camps and online courses and free YouTube videos and Hack the Box and GitHub repos with different tools. And I mean, there's a new tool. I mean, there's thousands of tools literally built every day for whatever task in cybersecurity world. So the other thing I did want to mention that I'm just remembering now because I was going to forget it. But when you're looking for jobs, and this is for anyone out there, I suggest you look in the non-traditional places. Most people are I don't want to call them lazy these days, but like back when I was younger, you had to like save money for the Sunday paper, go physically buy it, look in the help wanted section, call places or, go to them in person, fill out an application in person. And now we can click a button, right? Especially like on LinkedIn, you can set up your profile, you click a button, poof, you applied to the job. That's fine, but think about it a different way. There's like 10,000 other people doing the same thing. Right, because most people just want to click, oh, I'm done. Let me go hang with my friends. Let me go watch Netflix, whatever. So my suggestion for you out there, if you're looking for a job or if you're thinking about looking for a job, is think about some places that people aren't usually going or that at least require a little bit of manual effort. So instead of just giving that theoretical thing, let me actually give you some ideas here. So number one, venture capital firms. Look at their portfolio companies. Just Google search venture capital firms in your area.
I was Ken. I was about to
Yeah.
mention it because I saw a video of you explaining just that.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's unbelievable, phenomenal. And I would just say, not that the job itself is also phenomenal. It's sort of the fact is that these startups have like, once you get in, you're basically exposed to, you're a jack of all trades. You're not siloed into one different particular role. You're basically thrown out to the kitchen sink, which is amazing to gather experience. And sorry,
Yeah,
I didn't mean to
absolutely.
cut
And
you off.
then, no, you're fine. And so two main things with the startups, right? Well, three, one, they might fail. But the other two things is they're more likely to hire you and they're more likely to create a job for you, right? Especially if you're someone kind of newer. If they see that drive and stuff like that, they can realistically create kind of a lower tier level job, train you up, and you might find yourself in a couple of years, because it's a startup, you might become the VP in just a couple of years. Whereas a traditional, like a big company, you've got like a 10-year trajectory if you're lucky to get into like a more senior leadership role. But like a startup, yeah, they may fail, but like you were mentioning, you're going to learn all sorts of things. It's baptism by fire, as we call it, right? And so
Totally.
with that, the venture capital firms, you can look at their portfolio companies. You can look for jobs open. Don't worry about job titles. Look at the skills they're asking for. If you don't see something that fits what you've currently got skill wise, try to find a contact email address, right, or a contact form on the website, and keep it as short and simple. Like, hey, my name's Ken. I'm in my college degree program for cybersecurity right now. These are the couple of courses I've taken so far. I'd love to see how I can help your team. You're not asking for a job, right? If you start asking for a job, they might just ignore you, but you're just trying to see, hey, how can I help? Because maybe that turns into 1099 contract work, instead of a full-time position. That's fine. That's still experience for your resume, right? That's a real experience, and they're more likely to hire you anyways. A lot of places will give you like kind of that temporary, like, let's see if this person's really a good worker or not. Another place, and then also with the venture capital firms, you could also reach out to the VC places themselves and say, hey, I'm getting my start in cybersecurity. I'd love to see how I can help your cybersecurity, your portfolio companies with cybersecurity things. And they may introduce you. They might know other companies that another VC firm or that's they're friends with has invested in that are cybersecurity. Now all of a sudden you got the people with the money making a phone call on your behalf saying, hey, hire this person, or at least get them on a call. The other place I want to mention is looking at the big conference websites and their company sponsor list. So, for example, in cybersecurity, looking at like Black Hat USA, RSA, et cetera, DEF CON. If I don't say DEF CON, people are going to hack me. So DEF CON, B-Sides, et cetera. And also like cloud, big tech conferences, right? So like AWS, Amazon AWS has reInvent. And looking at the company sponsor list and looking at the lower tier level sponsors, so basically the cheaper packages, a lot of times those would be the smaller startups, and those are the ones you want to look at. You want to actually go to their websites if they got them. Well, everyone should have a website these days. Look at their career page if they have one. If they don't, try to find contact info for them. Just, again, that short, simple message, hey, I'm Sally, I'm Tamiko, whatever. I'm doing this right now. Just a couple things. Don't be like, I'm, 4.5 pages of, I'm doing try hack me and I'm doing this. Short, simple. I'm in a college degree program for cybersecurity right now. I want to see how I can help your company. Boom. Now, if they do have career page, look at the jobs, like I said before, look at, with the VC stuff as well, look at the job postings themselves and look for skills that you're good at, because they might have one of those transition or feeder roles that we talked about earlier available, and you could just apply for that. And then, in the interview, you can tell them, hey, I'm in college right now. And they're like, okay, cool. And then they could start putting you on projects around cybersecurity as well, even if it's a marketing job, right? They'll start having you sit with the different teams. So let's say you sit with the pen testers, you're like, oh, this sucks. But you thought in college, while you started out, you're like, oh, this ethical hacking, this is what I want to do. But now when you see it in the real world, you're like, oh, this sucks. I want to do auditing, right? I'm a nerd like that. I want to do auditing. And so it exposes you to the different actual day-to-day jobs that, college, university, boot camps, they have their purpose, but they can't show you what that company's doing day-to-day, like being at that company, right? So the big conference websites, like Black Hat USA is like a gold mine of companies that you can just, but again, that takes manual labor, right? That takes you actually putting in some
Takes an
work
effort.
and doing it, right? It takes effort. But oftentimes that effort has, in fact, everyone that I've directly mentored that has followed what I'm saying right now to either venture capital firm portfolio companies or like Black Hat USA is where most of them looked up companies at. Every single one of them was hired by a company, not the same
But
company.
I tell you why, because everybody just clicks.
Yeah,
You don't have to.
100%.
All you have
Yeah,
to do is just
yeah.
be a little bit different. You don't have to be exceptional. Just the fact that you went through the motions and doing something extra with a bit of a purpose. Um, and I would add to that yeah, listen, the small business size companies in the U.S. is the backbone. There's a lot of non NGO, non-for-profit organizations and so on. As a early cybersecurity practitioner, you can companies that are in need of an audit or review. You can just somebody knows somebody, maybe a store that you typically shop there, and just say, listen, I'm studying for cybersecurity. I would love to review your security posture, and I do it at no cost to you, and potentially just gain some experience. And maybe two or three or four would say no, but eventually you'll come out to the fifth one and would say, yeah, why not? It doesn't cost anything to me. And then you create some sort of experience. You can have this under your belt as a project that had to start at the beginning and end, and showcase as part of your portfolio of what you've done. Because that's really some of the main hurdles is, how do you get to that, to the not the junior, no experience. How do you overcome that?
Yeah, 100%. And one of the I don't know if I'll use the word best, but I'll use it for lack of better words right now. But one of the best places to do what you just said are like churches, right? Like if you're into organized religion, even if you're not, go to a local church or place of worship. I mean, regardless of whether it's Christianity, Muslim, whatever. go there and just say, hey, look, this is what I'm doing right now. I'm learning cybersecurity skills. I've taken these courses so far. I'd love to, just like you said, do this kind of an audit of, your website, or, we just have a conversation, whatever it is. And, in exchange, if you wouldn't mind just writing a simple recommendation letter for me, explaining, how I helped you, if you were happy with, what I've done for you. Now, a lot of those places, they're not going to have money to like hire you. They're, like you said, they're nonprofits. This is a big church. They're really not going to have the money, but they love the free help. They will love the free help. Another thing you can do, at least here in the U.S., is a lot of bigger cities will have some kind of chamber of commerce, and even smaller places will have a chamber of commerce that works with local businesses. Reach out to them. Say, hey, I'd love to do a free webinar on phishing emails, and some of the things to look out for these
Absolutely love
days,
that.
or whatever.
Love that. That's a freaking phenomenal.
That'll do a couple things. One, it builds credibility. Like, oh, I gave a webinar for my local city, the small businesses. When you come into an interview and you say that, I don't, if all things other are equal, everybody's got Sec Plus, whatever like that. If you're the person that says that, that shows me huge initiative compared to someone else that says, well, look at me, I've got CIS, I took the CISSP at an entry level. I'm like, well, that's nice, but this person's actually out there, trying to help their community. The other thing that's going to probably lead to, though, is contracts for you from those businesses. They're going to ask you like, hey, can you help me with whatever? And it may not be a lot. Maybe it's $100 for just to get on a phone call with them, kind of talk them through, their questions or whatever. And then you can give them some pre-canned, security policies if they need that. But that gives you experience. That might get you a little cash in your pocket. Can't buy a lot for $100 these days, but you can buy something with maybe a candy bar or two at the store with $100. But it gives you that experience, right? So that's always a catch-22 that you see online. And when people tell you how to get experience, the usual answer is like, build a home lab, just lab it up. No, right? I'm actually against. I'm not against home labs. Before anyone tries to hack my network, I'm not against home labs, but at the same time, it's not like you building something in your home network isn't really having an impact on the community, right? And that impact on the community is what kind of what we talked about, finding jobs in different places. That impact on the community at a broader scale is something that really, really differentiates you as a candidate from anyone else. And especially if you are posting that also on social media, right? Building your personal brand and saying, I'm going to join, I'm in Houston, so I'm joining the city of Houston. I'm going to I just did a free webinar for their, some of their small businesses, and here's the recording of it. Because a lot of those places will record it and they'll put it on YouTube or whatever. Now all of a sudden you've got credibility with that entity, because now I associate you with City of Houston and cybersecurity. So you're more credible to me than somebody with Sec Plus or with 50 certs and college degrees and all that. Like, you're more credible to me as a hiring manager simply because you did a volunteer webinar. They probably take an hour and a half of your time, if even that. From experience, most of the small businesses don't know questions to ask you. So just have some common questions in place. So when you get to the QA and it's totally silent, you can be like, well, some of the common questions I get are these, and that might stimulate some more questions. But it's the little things, right? The little things like that are what really differentiates you from everybody else. And instead of you spending the next couple of years trying to find a job, oftentimes, if you do all the things we've been telling you on this podcast so far,
you're naturally going to land one.
Yeah, it's going to be, it's hard for you not to find something in a year. If you can't, if you're not at least getting an interview within a year if you literally are doing all the things we're saying consistently, I'd be really shocked that you're not getting interviews. So there's got to be something else going on, maybe your resume or whatever. But usually people are going to reach out to you on LinkedIn if you are building your personal brand naturally and be like, hey, are you looking for a job right now?
And building a personal brand, I would like to again revisit this. First of all, there's no excuse. I mean, there's just the availability of content, and the type of content you can create is almost endless. And you have to start because it's something that you can't do this overnight. You got to start building that either by posting. You can create like a short video about a recent incident and maybe give your 2 cents about it. Maybe you can create a short YouTube video talking about the importance of multi-factor authentication or latest and like every day. I'll give an example. I just got a fake Geek Squad invoice telling me to call this number. I was about to create a short video about it, like saying, hey, look, this is obviously fake, just for those people who are not aware, because it looks pretty official. But my point is, there's no excuse, and it's almost endless possibility of creating your brand. But it's just like you describe, it takes some level of effort. But even if you spend 10, 15 minutes working on your brand on a daily basis, by the time the year ends, and somebody Googles your name or more so like ChatGPT your name, right? Because that now is like the latest, kind of a search optimization. What comes out is really important.
Yeah, and you can actually get yourself on page one of Google, right? Your LinkedIn, if you're branding yourself and you're doing like a YouTube or whatever. I do want to stress you don't have to be on camera. I'm a total introvert. I'll be on podcasts on camera, but like if I have a choice, if I'm teaching something, I'm off camera. I'll show some slides or I'll show a screen recording or, I hate being on camera. And it's just, I've been on camera so much, but I'm still like an introvert. I had a television show, several years back and reached millions of people around the world, but I'm still an introvert. And I hate being on camera. Like you'll see me at a conference, I'm trying to duck and weave, and hide in the corner. And people are like, hey. I went to Black Hat just real quick. I went to Black Hat. I think it was 2018, 2019, and there was literally like a whole game people were playing, like tracking me down. Like there was hundreds of people trying to find me, and it was it was great to
I'm
have that
surprised you didn't
level of
wear
love.
one of those masks.
I
Seeing
should have.
what a guy like,
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah,
just
yeah. The Guy Fox. Yeah, I should
the
have. I
guy
should have
Fox.
had left it at home. Rookie mistake. But it's you're just trying to get your name out there, right? I mean, if you look at who's in office right now when we're filming this, the only reason that person was able to get in office is they put their name out there for years to build up. Well, I'll say cult is the word I'll say, but some people won't like that, but that's okay. To build up a cult following that will vote you in, in an office. That being said, you have to put yourself out there, But what I want to stress is you don't have to actually be on camera. There's a lot of people that will write posts or they'll screen record them doing something or whatever, or just have a podcast. For those of you, because a lot of people ask me that question, like I don't want to create content, I don't want to be on camera. Neither do I, right? So we're in the same boat on that. You don't have to do that. But the personal brand is so critical, even for those of you working a job right now in cybersecurity, because your personal
Correct.
brand helps you get more money. When you come to a company with a brand already, they're already expecting they're going to have to pay for that brand, right? Like the negotiation isn't really negotiation at that point, right? Because you can walk away if they're not paying you what you want. You walk away, be like, well, I've got, I think, we'll just use me as an example. I think I have 40,000 some followers or 50 or whatever it is now. I don't pay attention to that stuff. But if I did, I could walk in and be like, hey, I've got 40 something thousand followers on social media that's coming with me as well. If I start posting about this company, that's going to lead to deals for you, potentially at some point, so this
Yeah,
is
it's
what I
value.
expect, blah, blah,
It's
blah.
value add.
Right,
They may
100%
not hire
value.
you for that, but it's
It's,
value add.
you're a business, right? If you think of yourself as a business, you're a business. And if a business doesn't market itself, nobody knows about the business and it doesn't make any money. Same way, if you don't market yourself, nobody knows about you and you don't make any real money. And a lot of people get frustrated at that because some people can't personal brand, right? Because they're doing classified work, their face can't be out there, etc. I mean, I've got friends doing that right now. But they still built a personal brand even though their actual photo is not out there anywhere, right? But people follow their social media because, hey, this person posts about, this breach or whatever, right? So you don't have to be on camera, but the personal brand in some capacity is so critical these days. I mean, you could get away with it back in the day, right? Because people weren't using the internet like that. There wasn't social media and stuff. But these days, you have to have a personal brand. It's expected. The first thing that like HR recruiters are going to do when you submit a resume to something is they're going to go right over to LinkedIn and see if you have a profile and look to see if you're posting racist stuff or whatever, right? So if you're not building your brand, but somebody else is, they're probably going to call that other person for the interview, even if you're actually the better candidate.
Yeah, and I think that the whole concept of resume is becoming obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah.
I think that the future of everybody's going to be self-employed, meaning that you're going to provide these microservices to companies. I think that's where the industry and as a whole is moving. Again, it takes so much time, as you described. You didn't go to 40,000 followers overnight. you're building it up, and you got to start somewhere. And there's no barriers to entry. Again, I think there's some YouTube channel creators that overnight, by creating content that people want to watch, they became a sensation almost overnight without the need of expensive SEO or pay per click or anything like that. It's like completely organic just by providing content that people want to watch.
Yeah, so
And
you so
I
you hit
can't stress
on
that enough.
yeah, you hit on some critical things there, right? So and one thing I also want to mention is consistency is a key for anything, whatever social media. So like pick one social media platform. LinkedIn honestly is probably the best one for the vast majority of you listening, simply because that's where the cyber business community is. That's where business deals happen. That's where the jobs, people reaching out via for jobs and stuff like that. That's where that stuff happens, right? It doesn't happen on TikTok. Not saying you can't have a TikTok, but like it doesn't happen there, right? That stuff happens on LinkedIn, and so what can you be consistent with? Like you need to be honest with yourself. If you only have time right now to post once a week, then you stick with that, right? If you can only post on Sunday night, you stick with Sunday night, and you do that consistently forever. But focus on the next 90 days. Like for the next 90 days, I'm going to commit to posting every Sunday night, right? Or whatever. If you can post more, great. But if not, every Sunday night I'm going to post. The other thing you mentioned there is around the overnight success stuff, right? Without having to pay for anything. I have a free LinkedIn account. I've never had a paid LinkedIn account. I'm not giving them any money. If they ever say like you can't use LinkedIn without paying, I'll do a post saying bye everybody, and I'll be gone, right? I don't care, right? Who cares? There's other ways to find me, right? But like you don't need a paid LinkedIn account. There's no value really unless you're like a business owner trying to use like Sales Navigator. But again, there's other tools out there these days that you don't need that for. But like somebody trying to get a job, you never need to pay to account on LinkedIn. Now you got to keep it in mind that when you're sending like a cold connection to somebody, I think you're limited to like 3 or 4 private messages a month now or something like that, or a week or a day or whatever the limit is. But you're limited with a free account in some capacity. But that has nothing to do with you building a personal brand and networking. Like you could do all that stuff without that. The biggest thing is consistency. The other thing you mentioned with the YouTube example is what people want to look at. Don't hang yourself up on that too much initially. Just like push stuff that you're doing. Like just kind of document what you're doing in college or boot camp or whatever. Like that's the easiest thing for you to do is just document what you're doing. And then eventually, when we think of YouTube, it's the second biggest search algorithm behind Google. So what you do with YouTube is you figure out what are people searching for. So instead of you putting out a post just on like the CIA triad, people are going to search for what is the CIA triad, right? So make a video. What is the CIA triad? And put it out there. And so when people are searching on Google, what do they find? They find your video. The other thing with that is put your name in the title if you've got room after the title of what they're searching for. So for example, with that example, what is the CIA triad dash Ken Underhill? And so when they start searching your name, all these YouTube videos are going to pull up, right? Your LinkedIn is going to pull up. You're going to own page 1 of Google for the most part, right? For your name. Unless you got like a name like John Smith, then you're screwed. But otherwise, for those of us that have somewhat of a unique name, you can do this
Hey,
tactic.
name change is only $29.99,
No,
I
right,
think.
yeah. Just legally change your name. You're good. You're good to go. Make it something, superfragilistic, espialogocious, and then you'll be good to go. But that's you're basically tapping into that SEO like you mentioned without having to pay for anything. It's also a tip for any business owners out there. Like you just literally, whatever your client, your dream client is searching for naturally for the problem they're trying to solve, create a bunch of YouTube videos on that and post them. And then when
And
they
they don't
search for
have to
that
be
thing, they're going to
polished,
find it.
Ken.
No,
I've
not at all.
seen I've seen somewhere that even the unscripted, completely like people turn on the camera and just recording and then
Yeah.
live posting it, is something that really works. Don't care too much about the bells and whistles or even the catchy clickbait titles. Even that is people are starting to shy away from that.
Yeah. People want their problem
Authenticity
solved.
wins every time.
Yeah,
Yes,
they
exactly.
want their problem solved in the fastest way possible. My number one video still is some PowerPoint slides where I just talk about. I think it's a GRC analyst path or whatever. That's the number one video I have. The top view so far. It's the simple stuff. Like I realized that because I was trying to be like fancy on the channel long time ago. And like even like the television show episodes, I've got some of those on the YouTube. When I had the show, it was like pushed out with an actual distribution company on real media channels, or not YouTube's still real, but like you know what I'm talking about, like actual television
Traditional,
channels.
yeah.
Right, traditional media, right. But those videos that are like professional edited, been like on actual traditional media channels and got lots of views, they suck on YouTube. Like nobody watches them, right? But people watch like me just teaching with slides, like and like my top courses ever that I've put out there. Like some of them will have like a hands-on, but that's me screen recording me doing the thing, and still like the actual like training, knowledge-based stuff is slides. It's not me on camera trying to, the camera lighting's bad or what. No, it's slides. And I'm not even on there. I might have a picture of myself to introduce myself. That's it. And people don't care. They do not care. Like millions and millions of people have looked at my courses over the years. I've never had anyone say, oh my gosh, you're not on camera. Actually, I take that back. I've had like two or three people maybe in all that time, maybe less than 10. Maybe there's more than a couple, right? But like the vast majority of people, they don't care. The only thing I've ever had actually feedback from maybe, I don't know, millions of people, maybe like 100 people or so. And I don't have actual statistics on this, but like, is sometimes I get excited and I talk too fast, right? And I just like, especially if I'm like showing something on, and I'm walking you through a lab, I'm like, I get really excited like a little kid in a candy store. And so like I talk really fast. And just the thing I had to realize is like, that's just me, right? Like, figure out a way to slow it down or rewatch it again, or because some people like you talk too slow, and so you're never going to please everyone. I guess maybe that's another lesson from what we're saying right here. You're never going to please everybody, so just
But it's you don't have to. It's a long tail. Like
I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. When I was first going to create the very first pen testing course that I put out, the biggest hang up I had is I was looking. I was like, oh, look at all these other courses. Right, like look at all these people. They got thousands of students. Blah blah blah. Nobody's going to want to take my stuff. And I was like, well, let me just put it out, see what happens. And all of a sudden, like my course was number one. Right, like that course had over 1 million students in it. And one of I actually am still in touch with her. I don't know if she'll watch this podcast, but one of the people that took that course reached out and said, hey, I have a learning disability. And the way you explained things was the very first time I ever understood it, right? Like the way you explain things. And I've had that similar feedback to that a lot of times. So for those of you out there that are maybe like still hesitant, like, oh, I can't put something out and people think it's stupid or whatever, there's somebody out there right now that can only learn from you. Somewhere in the world, there's somebody right now that can't learn that thing until you put out the video or the post or whatever, because the way you've been gifted to explain it is the way they're going to get it, because your life experiences that you put into that content, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I understand that now, holy crap. And all of a sudden now they're hooked and they want to learn more about the thing, and so now they're your loyal follower. You don't need millions of followers, you just need a small group of loyal people. Quick story. So I used to have haters. Well, I still have haters. I don't see them anymore. And let me tell you why. So I started getting haters. Well, I've always had haters, but whenever you put stuff out, you're going to have haters. But maybe like, this started happening, we'll just say like...
But you know what? Haters is good for business, Ken.
Well, they are, sometimes, right? Because people are like, who's this? And yeah.
Or, it's the algorithm doesn't care whether it's people posting shit about you.
It's interaction, right? The algorithm, Oh, and so that's why you see all those spam comments, right, on the YouTube and stuff. Right. It's just the algorithm, playing the algorithm to get more views on the video. What I was going to say is, it's probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, whatever. It was several years ago it started, and the people in the hacker community started taking out, not like killing, but like taking out the haters. Like they're just destroying their social media. And one of them like told me about it, and that's the only reason I know about it. And then I was like, I can't condone you doing that, so nobody tells me about it anymore. But I know it still happens. And I'm not saying that, and I'm not telling you people to like take down his social media accounts, whatever, but like they're just doing it because when you give so much and when your focus is on trying to do good, people, even if they don't directly like you or know you, they'll jump in and like behind the scenes, a lot of that hate stuff will go away, right? And so like I don't know if it still I'm sure it still happens, because I don't really see a lot of hate out there. Now if somebody's going to be on one of my posts and hating on purpose.
I've seen a guy who basically purposely mispronounced, terms. because that would create a barrage of comments and then spike the algorithm to because he knew how to pronounce it, but he mispronounced on purpose, just so people can comment and say, "Well, that's not how you pronounce it,"
Yeah,
and
people.
just
Yeah, yeah. It's
because otherwise, if
yeah.
everything's good, nobody's commenting. And also, I would say that now there's no excuse because there's a lot of these tools out there. There's schedulers. They can record a bunch of stuff all at once and then post it on an interval. There's multi-platform. Again, these tools are really inexpensive. Like where you create one video or you post it on multiple social media accounts. There's just there's repurpose ways to repurpose long form videos into like a shorter ones. We live in a phenomenal time of for creators because again it's a lot of this stuff that took forever and ever to do. I'm sure when you're back in the day when you had to manually edit, now and everything is done pretty much auto magically.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, there's websites like Fiverr where you can hire people for cheap. You mentioned the schedulers. A lot of them will have like a free version where you can post,
That's right.
maybe 5 videos a month or something for free across multiple platforms. So you literally don't need any money to get started building your personal brand. You just need to start, building your personal brand. The other thing I'll mention is like we talked a little bit about the conference stuff earlier when I mentioned the searching for jobs, but also look up local conferences in your area, like the smaller conferences. I know all the vendors out there are going to get mad at me
Yeah,
saying this, but those are
B-sides.
more fun. Yeah, those are more fun than the big black hat, where there's 10,000 people or whatever. Like the small conferences allow you to build real relationships. Relationships are what's going to grow your career the most. People talk about networking all the time, but the actual relationships are what's going to grow your career the most. And also, if you decide to become a business owner ever, that's going to help you grow the most. A simple example is not recently now, but it was last year. Some people I know that for years built a relationship with me. They were trying to get a contract with a certain place, and I knew that certain place. Like I knew people there, and so I did the marriage, right? And so now they got a massive contract simply because of that relationship. Now, did it happen overnight? No, right? But it those relationships are so critical, even for your career. That's how you find out about opportunities. Because let's say David and I have a good relationship and he's like, hey, Ken, I'm looking for this role. And then somebody calls me up because I talk to senior leaders. I'm talking about CEOs, CISOs, VPs. I talk to directors. I mean, people that are a lot of the who's who of cybersecurity. I talk to people on a weekly basis. And if they're looking for a specific role, I actually had somebody reach out to me, was it yesterday, the day before? They're going to be hiring for a bunch of roles. And they're like, hey, if you know anyone or whatever, right? So if someone that I've got a relationship puts it on my radar, like, hey, I'm looking for this or that, I'll make that introduction. It works the same even for nonprofit organizations in the industry that are trying to help people, whatever. When they're looking for funding, several of them have reached out to me like, hey, do you know anyone? And I'll actually introduce them to various places because of the relationship is already there, right? So when we talk about networking, it's not just thinking like short term, like how can I get a job? It's how can I build a real relationship, with this other human being, and not going with the mindset of like how can I take advantage of them to get what I want. It's more about like
100%.
this person's cool. Let me just let's just kind of how can we help each other, right? It's kind of the way that
And this
because there's
industry
jerks, but
is just, Ken, this industry is just awesome like that. The
yeah, yeah.
people, I find the majority of the people are just like yourself. They're giving back. If you ask them for something, they're very responsive. I just think that the industry as a whole is a great place to be.
100% is a lot of really really good people, and that's why people stay in cyber, right? Is the people. I mean, there's jerks, like I was going to say. There's jerks all over the place. Trust me on that one. If you don't believe me, go to some conferences. But at the same time, there's a lot of really really good people out there, and sometimes the introduction isn't necessarily just for a job. And so, as an example, a very senior level person in the incident response space, there was some young women that want to go in that area, and like traditionally, they're like that type of person realistically isn't going to answer messages from most people, right? They just don't have the time. So unless they know you, they're not going to answer your message, essentially, right? So that's where that relationship stuff comes into play because they built a relationship with me. I then introduced them to that person, and one of them's got an interview I think actually today, maybe, or early next week or something. Around not with that person, but that person advised them on preparing for the interview, stuff like that, because that relationship was introduced, and so now they get mentoring from that very senior level person, that's executive level, on exactly what they would be looking for, and they're also getting introductions to, these different companies and things like that. And so all these things that's really the power of the networking, right? It's actually, so I do volunteer work with minorities in cybersecurity, and so on one of the trainings I did last year with them, there was a gentleman on there. I think it was October maybe. I did the training, but he did networking, right? So he was working. I think he's working for a hospital or he's working someplace, and somebody he knew, he built a relationship with them, and then they actually knew like the director of like, I think the job was at a hospital or something, and they didn't advertise the job, and he found out about it through that person. They're like, oh, let me introduce you to so and so, because they actually called me yesterday asking if I know people, and I don't know if he got the job. So if you are listening to this, let me know. But he definitely got he got through the first round of interviews, and he was on the second one when he was on that training. But again, those relationships, right? And that wasn't some big conference he went to. That wasn't him. That wasn't even him building a personal brand online. That was him just networking and building that personal brand of being someone trustworthy, someone hardworking, so people feel comfortable. I call it stamping my brand on you. So people feel comfortable stamping their brand on you to make those introductions for you to get, the thing. Some people have gotten free trips to speak at conferences because I've introduced them to the people running the conference, and I've admittedly so given the nudge, like, hey, it'd be great if you just pay for their trip out there. And because I've said it, they actually take it, and it ended up happening. I was like, oh, look, it worked. I didn't think it would work. But, things like that, right? The relationships are so critical. A friend of mine in town here who's a venture capitalist told me one time, or he mentioned one time, relationships are the currency of life. And it's such a, when you actually dissect that, right, it's such a powerful statement because that's reality,
Yeah,
right?
your
It's
network is your net
It's
worth.
your net worth, yeah, 100%. And I want to. It doesn't have to be just people in cybersecurity, right? I want to stress that for those that are kind of trying to get in, like the way you treat people out in public and stuff like that. Now, if someone's trying to rob you, like curse them, but like the way you treat people that you wouldn't expect, because like you don't know who the other people around you are, right? Like I'll be at the grocery store and I love it because nobody knows who I am. But like there's been a few times where someone, like one of the cashiers, will mention they're studying for something or they're trying to do something, and I know someone in that space, and I'll introduce them just because of my interactions with that person at the grocery store, of seeing them as a hard worker and all that stuff. So the relationships don't always have to be someone in cybersecurity is what I'm getting at, because sometimes there's that ancillary person. A great personal example is a friend of mine. He was at an investment event, met another venture capitalist, and that person's one of their relatives owns a cybersecurity company. And so all of a sudden, I was on a call with the CEO of that company, just trying to see if there's any way to, what can we do together, type of stuff. That didn't work out, and whatever. But that introduction came from this person who's not. I assure you, he's not technical at all, my friend. He's totally not technical. He calls me for every, like, what's going on with this? I'm like, calm down, But because that person was at some event, because I'm trustworthy, I've built the brand, the reputation, that person introduced me to someone that's almost a billionaire level type of person, right? So it doesn't always have to be someone in cybersecurity. I think that's a misconception when people say networking. They think it's got to be someone in cybersecurity space. Sometimes it's just the business owners out there, the small business owners, because they've got the connections into these companies as well, right? They're doing contracts for these companies. So just always being mindful of that when you're interacting with just everyday people, even a waitress at a restaurant. Don't be a jerk, because you never know who that
And
person might know.
I would even, Ken, I would even say that in this day and age where everything is kind of digital, we are, the analog piece, meaning the interpersonal relationship, when we actually get to speak with a person directly, is invaluable, meaning that it has even more impact than before. I think people are like sponges because we don't have that as much as we used to, and as human civilization brought us to where we are, we're still creatures of society. We crave these relationship. We crave a interpersonal interaction, which we don't have these days as much as we used to. So I think it's even super important what you just described to for us to be cognizant and take care of that every time we have an opportunity. But listen, I feel like we're going to have to do a part B of this conversation because we're just getting started. I haven't even covered any of the topics that I wanted to chat with you, Ken.
Oh man.
But but before we part ways, and we'll definitely do another one, maybe next week the same time. I'd like to ask you. We live in super interesting times. The past 2 years with the inception of AI, and I've seen a lot of injection of AI models into the cybersecurity space. And also the flip side of that, I've seen a lot of talks and conversation about how to secure AI models and the risk associated with working with AI models. So I just wanted to kind of before we part ways, maybe just dabble a little bit in that conversation as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll say a couple things. One, because generative AI in the general public is so popular right now, every cybersecurity company is saying their tool is AI, powered.
They sprinkle
Right, they
some
sprinkle the
AI
magic
on
dust
top of
on it.
that.
The magic dust has been there for a lot of them, right? They've already got the automation and stuff like that, and several of them have already been
Well,
using generative AI, right? But it's the magic
machine
dust.
learning, yeah, and I would say machine learning and standard deviation was there for so many
Yeah,
years, even before
100%. I
they,
mean,
yeah,
AI automation, right? That's been around since what, the 50s, 60s, or whatever.
yeah.
Jeff Rich and I talked about that a long time ago on a podcast, I think before we recorded. But anyways, so yeah, I mean, so the risk, I think, I mean, there's a lot of risk, which I don't think we'll have time to dive into all those. Nor am I an expert in that area at all. Do I consider myself? But I think that the education aspect of why are we trying to put these security blockers in place, just like anything else, right? Because I had seen a post maybe last week or so where they were talking about some developers that security team put blockers in place where they couldn't upload their code to like ChatGPT or whichever one they were using. So they just screenshotted it and uploaded it that way through the mobile app or whatever. So educating your users, like, why don't we want to do that, right? Like that's like when we talk about these discussions around AI, generative AI, that's what we need to do, right? It's more that like how can we protect our data? How can we build cyber resilience? I know Tia Hopkins, if she listens to this, will love me using that cyber resilience term. That's her thing. That's her jam. But like, how can we really protect our data, right? Like, why are we doing the things we do? Just like anything else we've been trying to do in cybersecurity for 10, 20, 30 years now, right? It's the same thing with generative AI and AI. Like, people need to understand, like, why are we telling you not to do this, right? Not because we're a mean cybersecurity team. This is why, right? This is the material impact to your day-to-day life at this company if you do this, right? This is the material impact to the business, when we're talking to senior leadership, right? This is the impact, right? So I think that's the biggest thing that I'm seeing in chatter right now is like you got your end users that are all excited, they're being pressured. You got to use generative AI for everything. Are we using generative AI? Are we using AI? Is AI in our tool? How do we sell it? And you've even seen that like in the education programs. Like everyone's like, our program is AI powered. Is it really, right? And so the biggest thing is the privacy, right? The protecting that data, just like always. How are we going to protect that data? How can we be good stewards of that data? And how can we convey that of why we're doing certain things and what we need our end users to do, right? Just like basic security awareness training. Don't click the link in the email. People still click the link in the email, right? But why? Why shouldn't I click the link in the email? Quick story on that. I was doing training for a healthcare organization. I did nursing, so I was able to say, hey, look, if you click this link in this message, then it's gonna lock out your charts. You're gonna have to rechart all your notes, and you're gonna have to do that in your time off, not get paid for it. Oh, you want a bathroom break? Not gonna happen because now you've got ransomware on your laptop. Scared the hell out of these. Oh, I was trying not to curse. Scared the heck out of these nurses, right? So I actually ended up there was a legit HR email sent out. I got like over 100 phone calls and emails like, oh my God, the hackers are getting us, right? And so not saying that you should make everyone paranoid at your company, but the more you can like actually relate it to what they care about, that whether it's AI, generative AI, or whether it's standard stuff we're talking about, whatever you're trying to educate them on, that's the key right there. Like make it where they understand where stuff can really go wrong in their life of what they care about. When you do it that way, they're much less likely to do the things you don't want them to do, right? Like uploading screenshots of sensitive company code to ChatGPT or wherever they uploaded that stuff to, right? So that's kind of
And what
the
about
main thing I'll cover. Yeah, go ahead.
the promise of AI helping us become more secure? We've seen Copilot, and we've seen the promise of yet again automation, anywhere from SOC to SOC analyst, or even I've seen a company just providing a virtual CISO, meaning that they'll have a machine learning or AI engine to siphon all the information from the organization, and then they upload it to this large language model, and they're going to make a decision on where to take the company next from a cybersecurity perspective.
Yeah, how are you
So
securing that? My first
what
question.
about
Yeah, my first question.
yeah? So what's
How are you securing that stuff, right? So I think now I forget your question because I got so hung up on the
well,
to
it's
the
just in the LLM space, like what's the promise of are we
oh
getting
yeah
more
how
secure because of these, or these the tools are going to be just yet another tool in the arsenal, and you're still going to need people
well
to
we
review and
yeah, I
go
mean,
ahead.
at the end of the day, we always need people, right? Like, I think people get paranoid every time something new, hits the market. Oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. You might, if you're not upskilling, right? If you're not kind of, and you should be doing that anyways. Like, what kind of cyber practitioner are you if you're not constantly learning? Because the adversaries are constantly, oh, let me try this new tactic, right? So if you're not learning, what are you doing? You're in the wrong field. Go be an accountant or something where it stays the same for, a long period of time.
Mike, that
So
was a that
yeah,
was a drop mic moment, Ken. Just like
boom.
you know,
But that's the reality of it, right? Like if you're not constantly learning, I mean, and learn COBOL programming too, right? Because we need that. Remember the panic from I think a few years back, or whatever. But anyways, like new tool. Was it Biggie? Forgive me, anyone that grew up in the '90s like me. I think it was Biggie, right? More money, more problems, right? So like more tools, more problems, right? Like it's just the reality of it, right? So there's more risk involved. Yes, it'll help with some things. It also introduces risk especially when we talk about data privacy. It introduces a lot of risk. So like, it's just a new fancy thing. It can speed up some things, but like we always will need a human. Where I get really scared is when we start talking about plugging in generative AI, trying to put that on like an ICS network. I get scared, as should anyone. But I haven't. I don't think that's happening yet. I would lean to my friends in critical infrastructure. I know they're using it on IT networks, but like so yeah. I mean, more money, more problems, right? More tools, more problems. More tech, more problems. More people, more problems, right? Because the bigger your organization, the more likely of an insider threat. So like it's just always going to be that. What is it? What's that kid playground? The teeter totter? Is that the
the seesaw.
seesaw? There you go. Yes, that's the yeah.
I
So the
love
balance,
that
right? It's always
because
it's always a balance. Like we think we're here, and then some major attack happens. We're like, oh, we're screwed. We're here. And so
but
it's
this is
it's
why the space is so exciting, Ken. It's like because it's like
right.
a
Yeah,
never
it's
ending,
it's it's
you
never
know.
ending. Which scares me, right?
Yeah,
That's
we're
why.
just.
That's why
I think
some of us are getting that gray hair. Like I got some gray hairs going on. I'm like, oh, it never ends.
we're just in the infancy. I think, despite the fact that this cybersecurity industry as a whole is maturing. But I think that just the explosion of IoT devices and technologies in every aspect of our lives, it's a never-ending race to secure everything basically. And we're a knowledge-based economy, so everything is knowledge, everything is bits and bytes at the end of the day. So yeah, we'll do a part B of this because again, I think I haven't even scratched the surface of the stuff that I prepared. But before before we do that, what's the easiest way for people to learn more about you, to get in touch, to follow you in any of the spaces?
Yeah, I
What's the
mean,
easiest way?
so LinkedIn, and I will be doing more effort on the YouTube channel this year of putting out like free cert prep like Sec Plus and probably some others. But LinkedIn is where I'm the most active at, and that's where you can like message me. It's set to default follow, so you actually have to, like we talked about earlier, effort. You actually have to put effort into like clicking the extra button and click and connect, and send a message. Just mention the podcast or whatever. That way I know you're not a bot, or at least in theory, you're not a bot. Somebody will write some script now, and but that way, because I get a lot of
And
requests, and if there's not a message with it, if anything looks off on the profile and it doesn't have a message, I automatically just ignore it. So it just there's too many bots out
as
there. So
yeah, as it should. It's a good practice. And yeah, I would love to help you with the effort. Maybe we should do a couple of these sessions about current events. It seems like there's an endless barrage of security incidents and things that just happen on a day-to-day basis. It's like almost like you can never keep up with it. Maybe we'll get on the horn and we'll just record a couple of these, just commentary, if you wish. We'd be the talking heads talking about these cyber incidents. But until then, thank you very much, Ken, for joining me today. Much appreciated. Thanks to all those who joined. And until then, stay safe online as well as offline, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you very much.